Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow. Chapter 2. As it happened, Houdini's unexpected visit had interrupted Mother and Father's coitus. There was no sign from Mother that it was now to be resumed. She fled to her garden. As the days passed and the time for Father's departure approached, he waited for the mute sign that he might visit her bed. He knew that to make an overture of his own was to threaten the occasion. He was a burly man with strong appetites, but he appreciated his wife's reluctance to assume the indelicate attitudes that answered to his own needs. In the meantime, the entire household girded for his departure. His gear had to be packed, arrangements had to be made for his absence from his business, and 1,000 other details had to be seen to. Mother lifted the back of her wrist to her forehead and pushed aside a strand of hair. No one in the family was unmindful of the particular dangers to which Father would be exposed, yet no one would have him stay because of them. The marriage seemed to flourish on Father's extended absences. At dinner, the night before he was to leave, the cuff of Mother's sleeve brushed a spoon off the table, and she grew flushed. When the entire house was asleep, he came to her room in the darkness. He was solemn and attentive as befitted the occasion. Mother shut her eyes and held her hands over her ears. Sweat from Father's chin fell on her breasts. She started. She thought, "Yet I know these are the happy years, and ahead of us are only great disasters." The next morning everyone rode down to New Rochelle railroad station to see Father off. Some of the office staff was there, and Father's chief assistant made a short speech. There was a spattering of applause. The New York train arrived, 5 varnished dark green cars pulled by a Baldwin 440 with spoked engine truck wheels. The little boy stared as the wiper with his oil can checked the brass drive pistons. He felt a hand on his shoulder, turned, and his smiling father took his hand and shook it. Grandfather had to be restrained from lifting the bags. With the porter's help, Father and Mother's younger brother laid the trunks aboard. Father shook the young man's hand. He had given him a raise and a more responsible position with the firm. "Keep your eye on things," Father said. The young man nodded. Mother beamed. She gently embraced her husband, who kissed her on the cheek. Standing on the rear platform of the last car, Father doffed his skimmer and waved goodbye as the train went around the bend. The next morning, after a champagne breakfast with the press, the men of Perry's polar expedition cast off the lines, and their sturdy little ship, the Roosevelt, backed out of her berth into the East River. Fireboats sent up sprays of water which misted in rainbows as the early morning sun rose over the city. Passenger liners tooted their bassoo horns. It was not until some time later, when the Roosevelt had reached the open sea, that Father was persuaded of the actuality of the trip. As he stood at the railing, there was transmitted to his bones the awesome, unalterable rhythm of the ocean. A while later, the Roosevelt passed an incoming transatlantic vessel packed to the railings with immigrants. Father watched the prow of the scaly, broad-beamed vessel splash in the sea. Her decks were packed with people. Thousands of male heads in derbies, thousands of female heads covered with shawls. It was a rag ship with 1,000,000 dark eyes at him. Father, a normally resolute person, suddenly foundered in his soul. A weird despair seized him. The wind came up, the sky had turned overcast, and the great ocean began to tumble and break upon itself as if made of slabs of granite and sliding terraces of slate. He watched the ship till he could see it no longer. Yet aboard her were only more customers, for the immigrant population set great store by the American flag.